What is going on out there, YouTube land? Welcome in to a live edition of Couz's Corner, a surprise live edition here, as I'm finally, I have been able to hook up with Mr. Greg Flugaur. He and I have been trying to do this for a while, but our schedules just never seem to work out. But here we are, Greg. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I am very happy to be with Couz Corner, Mr. Justin Walker, the greatest voice in all of college football YouTube channel. If I had that speaking voice, man, I'd be going someplace.
Well, thank you, Greg. I appreciate that, man. It means a lot. You're doing just fine for yourself over there on College Football's Peak Around the Corner. So everybody, any of my listeners out there who may not know who Greg Flugaur is, which is probably very few of you, he's got a channel called College Football's Peak Around the Corner with Greg Flugaur. Go check it out. One of the best out there when it comes to covering conference realignment. The man who predicted the USC-UCLA move before it ever happened, and was pretty on top of this whole Colorado thing too, if I might say.
Yeah.
Hey, I like this one here. Two Mazdas in the house. He says, Couz and Dagger.
Ooh, yeah.
Couz and Dagger. I like it.
That's good. That's good.
I like it. Well, let's jump right in, Greg. This one thing I want to get your take on today, and I know you've covered a little bit on your show, is the whole Florida State news.
Yeah.
News has come out that Florida State is actively looking to get out of the ACC. I think it was reported by David Hale over at ESPN. If I'm not mistaken, is who reported it first.
Yeah.
And Florida State's got a board meeting scheduled for August 2nd. Doesn't mention sports in there, but there's a little nugget in there that says one of their booster groups, they're going to be talking with them about a loan.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the booster group, but
it's Seminoles Booster Incorporated.
There you go. Seminoles Booster Incorporated.
I don't think that has anything. We haven't been able to confirm it, and I believe it doesn't have anything to do with the start of building up the war chest,
right?
That they're going to need if they're going to challenge the grant of rights, or if they're going to try to get themselves in a position for a settlement with the ACC, ESPN, but mainly ACC,
right?
On December 26, 2022, on my YouTube channel, we were going to do a live show, and we were going to talk about everything we learned from the Florida State money perch, a guy that we know, successful person, booster.
Right.
But we couldn't quite tell everything we knew. The little at the very start of the show, we were kind of asked to stand down by somebody. So we stood down, but we did give everybody a little bit of a peek around the corner and saying that in a couple months from December 26, 2022, in a couple months, Florida State will be coming out with some messaging in the public about how they're not happy with the ACC, and if they don't get what they want, they would give hints, nods, winks to them potentially down the road challenging for the grant of rights. When we were told all of this, and we talked about in December 26, 2022, we were also told that this would probably happen in the first quarter of 2024.
Okay.
That's when they would put their head out, and if they pull the trigger, if they actually challenge the grant of rights, if they actually go to court, if they actually say to the ACC, we are withdrawing from this conference, they're putting all their chips onto the table. We were told it would happen first quarter of 2024. Because, if you're going to do this, Couz, if Florida State's actually going to do this, waiting does not help them.
Right.
If you go to 2025, 2026, because this thing, whatever you're about to do, could last a long time in the courts. So if you're going to do it, you're going to pull the trigger earlier rather than later. But we were told the first quarter of 2024.
Okay. Makes sense.
But we've got our, go ahead, Couz.
No, go ahead. You may answer my question. Go ahead.
We had a live show March 31st, 2023. Florida State Money Perch told us information. Okay, these are the possibilities. These are the angles that Florida State would use to challenge the grant of rights. Number one, the bullet, the best way to do it, the easiest way to do it, the best chance for success for Florida State, something that they don't have control over, if Notre Dame would be the one that left first.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easier for Notre Dame to leave their ACC grant of rights that's only tied to the ACC network. Notre Dame's grant of rights isn't tied to the ACC Tier 1, Tier 2 media deals. So it's a lot easier, a lot cheaper for Notre Dame to get out of the ACC. Once Notre Dame would leave, from Florida State's perspective, which they don't have control over this number one scenario,
right?
That means that Florida State, according to what we've been told, could more easily challenge the grant of rights, the extended grant of rights that they signed, that all 15 members, including Notre Dame, when they extended it from 2027 to 2036, the last time they extended the grant of rights, that was tied into the ACC network, the creation of the ACC network. So that is what Florida State, Clemson, all those ACC schools, that's what they got in considerations in signing that extended rights. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if Notre Dame bails, that means the ACC network's value, what happens? Drops. Yeah, plummets. So then Florida State would say, hey, we're not getting what you guaranteed. Therefore, this extended rights doesn't apply to us anymore. It has to go back to 2027. And oops, we'll negotiate it now. We'll settle it if it's 2027. We'll get out in 2026, 25, whatever. Kind of like what Oklahoma and Texas did. But that doesn't seem to be happening, right? That number one reason, ability for Florida State to challenge the grant of rights. The other one was state sovereignty. We're not going to get into that because we don't think that's going to happen either. So the other remaining things for Florida State that we were told how they would challenge the grant of rights is the change in landscape of college football. Revenue now equals being able to compete. If you're going to have players with NIL, which we're going to have, and that's not going away and it shouldn't go away, but if we're going to have direct compensation from the conferences, schools to the student athletes, suddenly the whole game has changed. Suddenly, because everything has changed, maybe those contracts aren't valid anymore. They may argue that. However, what's really been hinted towards us is, Florida State was the last school to sign the original grant of rights, the ACC. Mm-hmm. They were the ones that ACC Commissioner Swofford had to go down there in Tallahassee and twist the arms of Florida State to get them on board. Was there any communication between the ACC and the Florida State? Was there an email? Is there something there, some document that Florida State can hold up and say, aha, let's settle this thing? We don't know, but Florida State Money Perch and some donors, Tallahassee donors, believe that is going to be one of those things that Florida State uses to do this. Having said all that, now we're into what day is it today? July 29th?
Yes.
And I don't know, man. So you've got Chris Nee from Florida State 247, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
This guy is not, he doesn't just say stuff to say stuff. He's very conservative in his statements. This whole time he's been, I come from the 247 family. I've read his stuff, okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't, he has been poo-pooing the possibility of Florida State risking themselves in challenging the ACC grant of rights, right?
Right.
Now suddenly he says it's more real than ever, more real than he ever thought it would come. So he's, without a question, he's gotten some information. That Florida State might be pulling the trigger.
Okay. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So he just came out with that a few days ago. And then the way that Mike Alford, the athletic director of Florida State, answered the question about, he was asked, what is Florida State's current status of being a member of the ACC? Which is really an easy question to answer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You say, yeah, we're a member. We're a
Right.
proud member. We're a committed member, right? Everything that DeStefano and Rick George said at Colorado.
Right.
Anything we would all say that as leaders of a university, we're committed. They're committed until they're not committed. But it's easy question to answer. And how does Alford answer it? He says, I'm gonna paraphrase it because I don't have what he says in front of me, but he says, well, because they brought up August 15th in that question.
Right.
And August 15th is the day that Florida State would have to making a formal announcement of withdrawal to the ACC for them to play in a different conference in 2024. So Mike Alford answers the question like, well, our board of trustees, we don't have a meeting. There's no meeting lined up from now until August 15th. I mean, what kind of answer is that, Couz?
Yeah, why just volunteer that information, right?
Well, that and the fact that, come on, it takes 2 seconds to set up a meeting.
Right.
Saying
It means
you
nothing.
don't have a meeting for 18 days or whatever, 16 days. My math is bad. Minnesota math is bad. Whatever he was saying, I mean, it's such an odd way to answer. It's almost like in the back of his mind is, we got to get a meeting set up here. So when he's asked the questions, like, we don't even have a meeting set up between now until August 15th. Basically, how could we withdraw? Well, I don't know. People are very suspicious. I understand why there's definite smoke. It would be an unbelievable story, Couz.
Oh, yeah.
If they actually did an official withdrawal before August 15th of this next month.
I know. Well, and that would, that August 15th date is key, though. It's they have to announce to the league that their intentions, that they intend to withdraw by that date. And then, or they have to wait till August 15th of next year, is my understanding, to do it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So if something doesn't break within the next few weeks, it probably won't break for several more months now.
Yeah.
It's kind of my feeling on it.
Well, my whole thought was the next part of the story was a school, probably Florida State or Clemson or potentially Miami, Florida. I think North Carolina has taken a much more conservative approach to it. But one of those three schools, probably Florida State. The next part of the story would be Florida State saying, we're going to court. We are going to court, or we want to settle, but we're challenging the ACC grant of rights. That's what I thought the next part of the story was.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole August 15th, Chris Nee, our money perch guy saying some stuff that we're not able to talk about right now.
I get it.
All of that makes me feel like, nah, Greg, you missed it. It's also going to be, we're challenging the ACC grant of rights. Oh, and by the way, we're withdrawing from the conference. All in the same.
Wow.
Well, right? I mean, that's why we're talking August 15th.
Yeah. That's true. Good point.
I wasn't thinking it in that way. So,
yeah.
There may be a bomb about to go off. I don't know. I mean, we're not declaring nothing here on Couz Corner, but
no, we're not.
It's just smoke.
It's some, it's a little bit of speculation, a little bit of smoke, a little bit of everything here.
Yeah.
Real quick, this is a little off topic, but we are going to get to this later, hopefully. But Outlaw of College Football he's a channel member, so I wanted to honor his comment here. He says the Big 12 will not add any more G5 schools unless it's UConn. I agree with that now, but they could potentially add more Group of Fives later down the road, is my opinion on that.
First of all, I love Outlaw of College Football. I love his style. I love his voice as well. Look, my opinion on UConn is probably a little bit different than everybody else. So I might get a whole bunch of people upset in Big 12 country. Unless Brett Yormark pulls off the inside straight, which he just might be able to get done, all four corner schools, or the Oregon thing. We'll talk about that. Unless Yormark just gets exactly what he wants, I think the Big 12 president should vote for the entry of UConn into the conference. All the reasons that everyone's talking about, the basketball, Brett Yormark wants to decouple the content of basketball and football. He has a vision and everything. But I think one of the reasons why the Big 12 presidents should acquiesce to Brett Yormark on this, if they don't get like four corner schools. So let's say Arizona joins the Big 12 next week, which I think they're going to do. We'll talk about that if you want.
We will.
And let's say Arizona State follows up. And then no one else does. I think they should go ahead and do UConn as a full member. And one of the reasons why I think they should do it that people don't bring up, or at least I haven't heard anybody bring up, I think you should keep Brett Yormark happy.
Yeah.
Honest to God, I think you got to keep that guy happy.
And hasn't he earned it?
Hasn't he earned it? Let him, for the Big 12 presidents, Brett Yormark has collected all this political capital.
Yep.
He's got all the chips. He deserves it.
He's done everything he said he's going to do.
Yes.
And he's done it probably quicker than everybody anticipated. So
he has ensured every Big 12 institution is going to be in the room when the future of college football and college sports gets decided in 2026 or for that 2026 and beyond, when the next expanded playoffs and beyond. So he's done that for all those institutions. I think you should make Brett Yormark, keep him happy. I think, he's got some visions in his head. UConn, the East Corridor, New York media. Can you imagine what he can do with that? I mean, my goodness, I think you should give it to him if you can't get the four corner schools.
I totally agree, Greg. I've been preaching that. Now, there are some majority of Big 12 country doesn't agree with us. West Virginia fan base is kind of split on this topic. A lot of us want UConn because it gives us another Eastern team to play. To be frank, not as much travel, and which would be easier for our sports programs. The basketball is elite. The women's basketball is elite. I think they have several other sports that I don't really follow that are really good from what I understand. And the football is on the rise with a coach who has coached in the Power 5 before, in Jim Moore Jr., and in the NFL, by the way. And I think if you put them and give them the resources in a Power 5 conference, they're going to be much more competitive. I mean, look, when they were in the Big East, they were competitive. As soon as they got relegated back down to a non-power conference, or in that case, a non-BCS conference, they weren't competitive anymore. And I think once you give them the resources they need, they can do that.
And
I really do.
And Brett Yormark should, he'll use the leverage of a Big 12 invite, and he'll get some guarantees from UConn. He'll poke and prod them to have some future plan of building a on-campus football stadium, 8-10 years down the road, whatever. I mean, it isn't going to come. This invitation is not going to come for free, right? UConn's going to have to. They're going to have to belly up to the bar and make some. They're not going to come in as a $31.7 million, right? They're coming in as a discount. So you got all that Brett Yormark can use. But all that is if Yormark can't hit the inside straight.
Right.
And he just might be able to hit the inside straight, or even better than an straight. He might be hitting an inside a royal flush or straight flush. So we'll see. But so I'm pro UConn, and plus Brett Yormark, the Big 12 did have meetings this week in regards to with their immediate partner Fox Sports, just going over their options in regards to basketball only editions. That's what they did this week.
Okay.
So you got that, that's still in play for UConn as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for that info. Another channel member here, Kenny Evans. Thank you, Kenny, for your support. He says, this is back to the, now we're shifting back to the Florida State topic. He says, UCF in the Big 12 is making more than Florida State and others. Wow. And that is one of the topics of contention with Florida State and Miami.
They're making more. UCF will be making more than Miami of Florida and Florida State when it comes to their tier 1, tier 2 media money. But I think it's pretty even, or the ACC might have a touch of advantage when you include the ACC network money.
Right.
So, it's basically a wash. But UCF is getting more for their partnership. The Big 12 is getting more for their partnership on the tier 1, tier 2 with Fox and ESPN than the ACC schools are getting with ESPN. No question about it. And I think UCF is going to be pretty good this year. First year out.
I do too, actually.
Yeah, I think they're going to have a really good defense. So they were pretty good last year. They got some good linebackers. I think they're going to be the best of the newcomers.
Mm-hmm.
But UCF's got a big future, big time get for Big 12.
I agree with you. I actually think they have a chance to be, in the future anyway, the best team in the league.
Yeah. Fox wanted UCF, ESPN wanted Cincinnati. So that's how that played out.
Yep. They both got what they wanted. That's perfect. Got a super chat here from Outlaw of College Football. He says, Nebraska should have let Missouri have the original Big Ten invite and instead join the SEC. Mizzou fits Big Ten and Nebraska fits SEC recruiting base. As a Big Ten guy, Greg, what are your thoughts on Mizzou being in the Big Ten potentially instead of Nebraska?
For some reason, Jim Delaney did not bite on that Missouri apple. That wasn't something he wanted. I think Nebraska is a more valuable brand school for the Big Ten. I have a very my relationship with the Cornhusker fans is kind of unique. Whatever they're drinking down in Lincoln, Nebraska, the Kool-Aid that they drink is something special. I'm glad I'm not drinking it up here. They've had some brutal. Scott Frost was absolutely brutal as the head coach of Nebraska.
Right.
The very first press conference gave off some bad signals. He said that we're going to make the Big Ten change how they play football instead of us changing to them. And you just can't do that in the Big Ten. It's just, it's a different kettle of fish. So I think Nebraska is going to be fine. Matt Rule, I think, is a great college football coach. So I think Nebraska, they're going to rise again one of these years. Everyone does. So Nebraska is going to have to do it at some point. But they've had some brutal leadership down in Lincoln. Just brutal. Just a clown show over there at Lincoln. They have all the advantages over all these Big Ten West schools. They have all the advantages over all of us. And yet they're at the bottom.
Yeah. It's baffling, to be honest with you. Absolutely baffling.
Yeah.
They haven't been able to compete there. On the Florida State stuff, I want to get back to that for a minute. I read an article a few months ago, and I was planning to do a video on it when the time is right, and I think now is the time. I'll probably try to get one up in the next couple of days on it. But someone by the name of Christopher Lambert, who some of you may know from Twitter, he's a pretty popular West Virginia fan on Twitter, and he follows college realignment really closely. It's not MHVER3; it's a different account. CW Lambert, I think, is what he goes by now, but nonetheless, he writes a blog, and on his blog a few months back, he wrote a story, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said that the Florida State could leave the ACC for the SEC and it would cost him much less money if not maybe no money at all, because the grant of rights for Florida State is actually owned by ESPN and not the conference, or something to that degree. And where ESPN owns the rights to the SEC as well, ESPN could actually facilitate that move.
Okay, I got to
For
go.
Florida, yep.
Preston, I got to go 1 minute.
Okay, go ahead, buddy.
I apologize.
All right.
Apologize, everybody. We'll be right back.
No problem. What you got to do. Greg has to take care of some personal things real quick, guys. But anyway, basically, this article stated that Florida State could leave to the SEC from the ACC with little to no penalty because of the way the grant of rights is written, that ESPN would facilitate the move because they own the media rights to both conferences. And I thought that was very intriguing. And when Greg gets back, I'm going to and I heard a podcast today, actually earlier today, Double Fries No Slaw, who's been on my show as well, who's basically said something similar. And he's a Florida State guy. And
all right, sorry about that, guys.
No worries. Are you good? Are you good to go, or do you need to?
We're good.
Okay. But basically, what I was saying, Greg, is he's saying that ESPN could basically facilitate that move to a degree, and because they own the media rights to both leagues, they could actually allow Florida State to leave the ACC, go to the SEC, and I heard a podcast today. I hadn't heard that from anybody else, so I didn't know how much, whether it had any legs or not, or any possibilities. Well, then today I heard a podcast. I don't know if you've heard of Double Fries No Slaw Pod. He's a Florida State guy.
Yeah, he does a good job.
Yeah, he's been on my show before as well. He talked about something very similar to that. So now there's two people out there I've heard this from, and it started to make me wonder, is that actually an option? And then I'm also hearing from some other Florida State folks that ESPN's getting nervous over all this Florida State talk because they're scared they're going to leave and go to the Big Ten. So I've heard that they're now I've heard that they're looking to hold a meeting or have had meetings or something with Florida State to discuss this stuff because they don't want to lose Florida State to the Big Ten and to Fox. So now I'm starting to tie all this together and think that maybe, just maybe, there is something to this, that ESPN could intervene here and do something to try to make sure that Florida State lands in the SEC instead of in the Big Ten. What do you think about that thought process?
First of all, I'm gonna say it up front. I do not have all the answers to this, and I'm not sure any of us does. Let me start with this. None of us in the chat room, Couz and I, and nobody out there in message board land and Twitter land have seen the last grant of rights, the documents. I know there's stuff that is out there on the internet, but that is not the last one. That's not the extended one. We don't know all of the grant of rights. We don't know what is written there. Now, it's supposedly not a very complicated document, but that is in a vault, ACC vault. Only the lawyers, only the athletic directors have seen it. They're not allowed to take pictures of it. So none of us have really seen it, number one. Number two, I've always been under the belief, and so have a whole lot of other people, that the ACC grant of rights is owned by the ACC conference. The distribution rights, who holds the distribution rights of that content, is ESPN.
Right.
So, and that's a big difference.
It is, and I may have stated it wrong, and I apologize if I did.
No, you stated it correctly in the sense of what people believe. So what I'm saying is I could be wrong. I mean, maybe I and a whole bunch of other people have been wrong all these years. Or maybe we were wrong here in the last 12 months. Maybe something changed that we don't know. My point is, we were always under the belief that the ACC, the conference, owned each school's individual media rights. Because when that happens, then the conference has the ability to negotiate a better deal with the networks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the networks now have stability. They know what the composition of the conference is for the term of the contract.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe now somebody send something to my Twitter DM, send to me whatever you want at Flag Empire, send it to Couz, and show me where it says that ESPN actually owns each school's individual rights. I'm under the belief that ESPN owns the distribution rights of the ACC conference until 2036.
Right.
2037, nobody owns. ESPN doesn't own the distribution rights, and ACC doesn't own those schools' individual media rights because the contracts run out.
Right.
So what I'm saying, if it is correct, then it's much more complicated for Florida State to get out because the ACC owns their rights, not the ESPN. So ESPN getting Florida State to SEC, it doesn't make anything easier.
Right.
Because if the ACC owns Florida State's media rights, that means that if Florida State should go to the Big Ten, they don't bring their ownership of their media rights to the Big Ten. That means it stays with the ACC.
Right.
So if Florida State played the Minnesota Golden Gophers at Tallahassee, and ESPN broadcast that right because they've got Florida State home game distribution rights because the ACC still owns their rights, then the money that's created for that Florida State home game against the Golden Gophers at Tallahassee, that money goes to the ACC.
Right.
And then per their bylaws, the ACC doles out the money. Oh, and it says Florida State's a withdrawn member. Florida State doesn't get this cash. Boston College gets a slice. Wake Forest gets a slice. I know other people, Lambert and other people have talked about ESPN now owns each school's media rights, distribution rights, and media rights. I've never seen that. I've never seen that written officially anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I'll have to do more of a deep dive on that. But as of now, I don't think that is true.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
I mean, I was under the impression that the whole point of a grant of rights was to give the conference the rights to that media money, and then they dole it out to the teams. That was my understanding. To me, that was the whole point of a grant of rights.
Yeah, and in doing so, it protects the Boston College.
Correct.
It protects the Wake Forest.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It protects the Syracuse, however you want to think about it. Because if some school goes, ACC has their rights, and the money goes to the schools that are still there. They all signed it. But if ESPN owns it, then ESPN can do some wheeling and dealing. And how does that protect the smaller brand schools of the ACC? But again, I could be wrong. Maybe something's changed. I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I'm open to somebody showing me some documentation or something. So
yeah, I am too. I would love to see it because I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I love this stuff, man. I could talk about it all day long and read about it all day long. I love it. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And that led to the article yesterday, which kind of segues into this comment by Kenny Evans here. And by the way, guys, I've got over 200 people in the chat or on the stream rather. If you want to make sure your comment gets seen, you can hit the $sign at the bottom, highlight your comment. I'll be sure to see it that way, and it's also a way you can support the show. But there's no way for me to read all these comments. There's just too many of them, so that will make sure yours gets to the top. And also another way you can do that is by being a channel member, becoming a member of the Couz's Corner VIP Lounge. You'll get a little badge beside your name, and that also gives you precedent over other comments in the chat room. But Kenny Evans says, I would still like to see WVU in the SEC. And earlier I had somebody, there's been a lot of conversation about West Virginia being mentioned as a candidate for ACC expansion now, based on that article that we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
I did a video on it yesterday. Owed to our late great friend Golden Blue Dude, obviously, because he loved to talk about this.
Yeah, he did.
But but West Virginia to the ACC to me might have made sense a few years ago, but right now it makes absolutely zero sense.
I don't know how you I can't see West Virginia agreeing to that.
No,
And I'm sure you went over. Why would they do that? I get their rivalries are there, and that brings up the value. It's better for tickets. It's traveling for your fans for their away games. But man, you got that grant of rights out there to 2036. You're going to have to sign that thing. Plus, you got Florida State and Clemson just rumbling, making noises. Come on, West Virginia, you can't do it. Not right now.
Yeah, I think the ACC with all the instability. Now, if the ACC were stable and you had faith that they were going to stay together long term and all this, then it might be a different conversation.
Sure. Yeah.
But right now, I just don't think you can do it. I think it'd be too risky. The Big 12 accepted West Virginia when the ACC wouldn't as well, which is another thing I think needs to be talked about more. ACC turned West Virginia down. Matter of fact, I think they've done it multiple times now. And the Big 12 actually wanted us. So, I think that should mean something as well.
Yeah.
And rivalries aside, man, you've got to do what's best financially and also from a stability standpoint. And I think the Big 12 is where that's at right now. Dave Patrick, if the ACC disbanded, there would be no one to pay. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I don't see it disbanding. I mean, I think it would take a lot for it to disband. But, that's definitely one of the options on the table, I guess.
Yeah.
But it would be a long shot, in my opinion.
So there's that dissolution theory out there, right? Where if eight schools vote, you can dissolve the conference. Therefore, the ACC doesn't exist. Therefore, the ACC doesn't own anyone's media rights. That's the theory. I don't think the theory works, though.
Right.
Really, I've never have. And but you've got the Magnificent Seven meeting in private, which I thought was such a great story. I mean, you had seven schools meeting in private, seven ACC schools. And I didn't have any intel on it. It took me, but I did guess correctly the seven schools. Once Ross Gellinger put out that there were seven schools meeting in public, and before Brett McMurphy put out the seven schools, I guessed it correctly based upon politics, right? North Carolina would have to have North Carolina State in that room if they were talking about that. Virginia would need Virginia Tech in that room, and then so you could get this, seven schools. In theory, had really any legs to it. If that was something potentially, you just have 8 votes, solve the league according to the state of North Carolina laws of organizations, nonprofit organizations, and all that. However, this theory is written, then I think they would have been able to get an 8th member, right? And they would have done that already.
Yeah.
Right?
That's fair. Absolutely.
But they didn't do it. And they came and all the reports are saying, it kind of just fizzled out because we couldn't together figure out a way to do something together to break the ground, So I'm not big on that 8 dissolution theory, but some people believe it.
Yeah. There are people out there. The gentleman I mentioned earlier, that does the Double Fries No Slaw show. He thinks it's on the table.
Sure.
At least he did when he was on my show.
Yeah.
And there have been others to talk about it, but David Cummings, thank you for the support. He's another channel member of the Couz's Corner VIP Lounge. He says BR7062 WVU isn't going anywhere. I totally agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And just for record, the article didn't say West Virginia was leaving or going. It basically just said, I think there have been talks, and West Virginia has came up in the conversation. That's really about as far as it's went.
I think that particular article mentioned something to the effect of the ACC ran the numbers on West Virginia. They ran the numbers on Washington. They ran the numbers on Oregon. They ran the numbers on SMU.
Right.
Again, Washington and Oregon. Why would they go out there and sign the grant of rights? Because if you go in that conference, you've got to sign that grant of rights in 2036. Why would those 2 schools do that? They wouldn't. SMU probably would. Right? They would
Yep.
probably sign it.
SMU would sign it. Absolutely.
Who? Yeah.
SMU.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they would. So then if you take SMU, Couz, who is your 16th school? What school out there that would be their 16th school? Like a Tulane?
Maybe.
Okay.
Tulane or trying to think, maybe USF if they can get Miami and if they could get Miami and Florida State on board to let them in.
I don't think they'd get on board.
Maybe UConn. UConn's goal has been to be in the ACC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Memphis is another one.
Ooh, maybe.
Gives Louisville a candidate,
Sure.
rival, another rival,
sure.
potentially.
Can you imagine though, Couz? Just imagine. Let's do some imagining here.
Mhm.
Big 12 takes Arizona. And let's say they take Arizona State and Utah, but whatever they do out here. Let's just say Arizona. And this Florida State thing happens and things just unravel in ways that we can't even imagine. I mean, look, Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh in the Big 12 with West Virginia. How about Louisville in the Big 12? Cincinnati.
Be awesome. Yep.
Cincinnati. Those are two games that the Big 12 could sell. The networks could sell the advertising to, national and regional. Those are money makers.
Yep, they are.
The athletic directors, the fan bases would just go nuts over that.
Yeah, I've said that multiple times on my show, man. Okay. Cincinnati and Louisville is a very underrated rivalry.
Oh yeah,
a lot of people don't, because they were in the Big East with us for a few years. I was, we're all familiar with it, but I don't think a lot of people around the country are. And Louisville and West Virginia had a little bit of a rivalry going.
Sure.
I mean, it wasn't as heated as the Pitt rivalry or the Virginia Tech rivalry, but it was getting there. I mean, we had some really good NCAA tournament games. Before Louisville joined the Big East, which kind of helped that. And
then you throw in Virginia Tech,
right,
and then take a fourth team, and there it is. There's your Big 12 conference for the next generation.
Yep, absolutely. Kenny Evans says he's all for paying schools based on their productivity, and that's something that I think is going to start being talked about more and more in these conferences. When you have a lot of these teams that are kind of, who feel like they're pulling the weight of the conference, like Florida State, for example. I think you're going to start seeing a lot more of that.
If it's the performance, the playoff money, I can see being distributed unequally, but the media money is not going to be distributed unequally. Like you're not going to.
Right.
These schools need to know a baseline, pretty much what they need to know what they're going to get next year, the year after, the year after, the year. They budget out 5 years. There can't be too much of a variable there. And plus, you don't want your bottom schools of your conference to get weaker and weaker and not be able to compete with the other schools and the other conferences, because that brings down the whole value of your conference as well. So there's going to be a little bit of that. I just think there's a limit to that. I don't think this unequal revenue sharing plan that they have in the ACC is going to help anybody out.
No, it's not enough money. I mean, you're only talking.
It's
just a Band-Aid. All it is was something to keep everybody quiet for a few weeks or a few months.
Yeah.
And so that they needed some positive PR to come out of that spring meeting they had. I think that's what it was all about, really.
Yes, sir.
And Outlaw, I saw your comment, man. I'm not able to pull it up. There's just too many to go through here. They're moving so fast. But he was talking about the comment earlier that someone made a comment about West Virginia going to the SEC, not the ACC. I know that's what the comment said, but I wanted to get back to that article. But I will address it. I personally think West Virginia would be a great fit in the SEC because of our culture. We have more of a Southern culture in West Virginia, especially if you cut the state in half and take everything in the southern part where I'm at. We kind of consider ourselves Southerners here, but I do, and we have the passionate fan base. It would be tough to compete at first, but I just don't see us ever getting in the SEC. I just don't think I don't think our brand is quote unquote strong enough yet. And if we can get back to winning again, it might be, but right now I just don't think it is. And SEC has other teams on the radar, like I would think, like North Carolina's, the Virginias,
Yeah.
Those type Virginia Tech, maybe even unfortunately, as
Yeah.
painful as that is,
Yeah.
we're in a state that does not move the needle. We're losing population. It's not a big market. The only way I see us ever getting into the SEC is if they expand to say like 24 teams or something.
Mhm.
Then we might have a shot. Because we did almost get in before we went to the Big 12, and Missouri beat us out for the spot. But things have changed so much in the last decade that North Carolina has grown so much. The state of Virginia has grown, and those have become really attractive markets.
No,
A lot of
I
these
yeah.
conferences plant their flag in, and I think West Virginia would have to be complete and utter chaos before we can get in. And heck, who knows? It could turn to that. But right now, I don't see it happening. What do you think, Greg?
I agree. I think it is what it is. I don't think West Virginia is going to be able to get to the SEC. As a Minnesota Golden Gopher fan, it is what it is, right? Minnesota Gophers are not out of the 16 Big Ten schools. I was about to say, Minnesota is probably the 12th most valuable, right? Right in the bottom third.
Yeah.
It is what it is. When people talk about, Colorado should not go to the Big 12, they should wait to go to the Big 10. I got to tell you that the school that Colorado most resembles when it comes to value is Minnesota. Minnesota is a professional league state. It's oversaturated. Minnesota and Colorado are the two states that have every single possible pro team you could imagine. Name the sport, they have it. It is both states love their sports, but because they do, and the population is similar, and just a lot of things are similar. Once you get outside of Minneapolis, we don't have the mountains here, but man, we got 12,000 lakes. I mean, we're just like, a lot of things going on in the state. And our value, our media value, a lot of things line up to Colorado. Look at the media market, I think, is exact. I mean, the size, everything's the same. The only thing that's different is Minnesota was one of the first 6 original Big Ten teams. So obviously, they're going to be in the Big Ten. But Big Ten is not looking to add another Minnesota to the Big Ten.
Right.
Because everyone would lose value. The Minnesota is below, we're in the bottom third or whatever. So it is what it is. Colorado's value, it can improve. Deion Sanders, all that can improve. But there's certain, there's a certain ceiling to all of us, right? West Virginia has a certain ceiling because of the demographics, 1.8 million. It's just, it is what it is for a lot of us, most of us.
Right.
It's
just the way the world,
it's just the way it
world
is.
of college athletics is. It's become all about market size.
Yeah.
Brand still matters. And West Virginia's brand is good, but it's not elite.
Yeah, it is good. It is good. It's very good. In fact, T-shirts, you name it, the sales, West Virginia, it's big time, actually.
Yep. David Z, $5 super chat. He says, Couz and Flugaur, a couple of good dudes. Thanks for the content. Just trying to show some love, support. Go Cyclones from the Twin Cities of Minnesota. Thank you, David.
Man, I see a lot of Cyclone stuff around here.
Big 12 guy. Do you really?
Right across the street. For years, a neighbor has a cover on his grill, outside grill, and has a big Iowa State emblem on it.
Awesome.
I look at it and I get sick every time I see it. Iowa State has won some recruiting wars against the Gophers lately. I can't pronounce his first name. I apologize, but their running back this year, David Z, Jarrell Brock.
Yep.
Jarrell Brock. He was supposed to be a Gopher, man. We got him all lined up. Had him all lined up. He was at the summer thing and outside of Flex, like on the Mississippi River. We thought we had him, and then Iowa State comes in and grabs him right at the last moment. So, yeah, those Cyclones, they're bothering us over here in Minnesota.
I want to shift a minute to the the Big 12, Pac-12 thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think if I read you right, you think Arizona will be the next team.
Yeah, I do.
To land in the Big 12.
If I could now peek around the corner of my YouTube channel, we use the Holy Smokes Theater, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about this imaginary theater to encapsulate the drama going on in college football, especially around realignment. At Couz Corner, we're going to use a truck stop diner to talk about.
There you go. That's perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
So Couz, Mr. Justin Walker walks in. He walks into this high-class truck stop diner. One of the high-class ones. He walks in there.
Buc-ee's.
Huh?
Buc-ee's.
Okay, Buc-ee's. I don't know what that is. We don't have one in Minnesota, but whatever. Justin Walker goes into Buc-ee's, and all the tables are filled, except for one table. And it has one of those flags on a stand at the middle of the table, and it has the number 14. And Walker wants to sit in there, and the waiter says, no, this is reserved. I think that table is reserved for Arizona. Mm-hmm. I think they've got a window of time. I don't think anyone can this from what we can gather at peek around the corner. Take it however you want it, chat room, and everybody else watching Couz Corner right now. I think Bobby Robbins, Brett Yormark, that table is reserved for Robbins to get the T's crossed and the I's dotted, to get all those little things that they need to get done internally. And if he doesn't show up to grab that seat, now that seat is open. So I don't think a Utah can crash in. I don't even think an Oregon can crash in. Now, let's have some controversy right here on Couz Corner.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's have people get fired up and say Greg Flugaur is an idiot. If Flugaur thinks for one moment that Oregon would call Brett Yormark and say, we want to sit at the 14th table and eat whatever, or Organians or whatever you call them, whatever they eat, and Yormark's going to say, no, the table's reserved. I mean, Flugaur must be an idiot. But I think that's where we're at. I think Arizona has a little bit of a time. They have talked. Arizona wasn't anywhere near Colorado. They were near them, but they hadn't done what Colorado had done with Yormark. As Couz Corner reported before anybody else on any YouTube channel, Couz Corner reported that Colorado and the Big 12 met in the first week of May. They met. Now that we know it was the city of Chicago, May 7th. Couz Corner reported that before anybody else did. Arizona hasn't done what Colorado's done. So you can't expect, in my opinion, Couz, you can't expect Arizona to jump into that boat the next day after Colorado did, or the next day or the next day or the next day. I think you should expect them to be able to jump in the Big 12 boat next week. And I think Couz and all you people in the chat room should take what Jason Shear said very seriously yesterday in his article at 247 Sports. According to his sources, and you can imagine who his sources are. By the way, he's nailed this whole story from the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. He's been absolutely A1 on top of it.
Yeah. So imagine who his sources are when he wrote this article yesterday. He said that Thursday meeting, which was 2 days ago, ladies and gentlemen, 2 days ago, the Pac-12 commissioner, the presidents, the athletic directors, they had a meeting, and the meeting could not have gone worse. You think Bobby Robbins is going to come out of that meeting and say, oh, we'll give George Kliavkoff another 2 weeks? No, he's not. That table at Buc-ee's is reserved, number 14, and I think Arizona is grabbing it.
Yeah.
And I think they have to go through this process to get it done.
And let me shed a little light on why Greg's analogy there makes sense, and why Arizona might get in over Oregon. If you all remember, Brett Yormark made a comment a few weeks ago. I don't know if it was at Media Days or wherever, but one of the many interviews he's done over the past few months, he made a comment that they want teams that want to be in the Big 12. We don't want someone to join our league just because they can't get a deal in the other league.
He didn't say that on accident. Okay, in my opinion, Brett Yormark is a very intelligent guy, and I would imagine everything he says is with a purpose. So, if everybody in the country, and if you don't, well, everybody except George Kliffkoff probably knows that Oregon wants to go to the Big Ten, right? And Washington wants to go to the Big Ten. So, if he knows that, are the presidents of the Big 12 and Brett Yormark going to say, "Hey, man, come on in. We know you're only going to be here 2 years and then leave anyway." Why would you do that? Why would you? I mean, if you know this, if you know they're not fully 100% bought into your conference, why would you let them in? Now, if Oregon can convince him otherwise, then maybe he does. But I just don't see it. There are reports or rumors, I don't know what you want to call it, out there that Oregon and Washington have talked with the Big 12, and I'm sure they have. I'm sure every school in the Pac-12 has spoken with the Big 12 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where it goes or where it's went. Greg, I don't know if you've heard anything from anyone on any of your sources about that. But
yeah, I don't think I am not saying that Oregon to Big 12 cannot happen. I just don't think it's table 14.
Right.
Because of what we've known about Arizona this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
In Brett McMurphy's reporting saying 1 to 3 more schools, Pac-12 schools. The dream scenario would be Arizona State, Arizona, Utah, and who am I missing? Arizona State, and Utah added with Colorado. That's the dream scenario. I think that's all still in play. Heather Dinich is reporting of 14 is the number. I just think that's Yormark trying to dislodge Arizona, to try to get some pressure using the press. I don't. If those 4 corner schools all agree, if all of them say yes, we want to get in the Big 12, Yormark's not turning any of them down. In fact, the networks won't even turn down Oregon and Washington for 17 and 18, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe in that 14 only room for only one more. I just think that's a big old leverage ploy by Brett Yormark, and I think it's brilliantly done. I think he's doing a number on everybody again.
Yeah. So Greg, with that being said, did you hear Brett McMurphy's interview on Sikkim 365 yesterday, where he talked about that Fox has verbally agreed to pay the freight basically for 2 schools,
mm-hmm.
but not for 4?
Yeah.
Do you think that's part of the PR?
No, I think that's accurate. But I think the key phrase is, as of right now, Fox has agreed to pay the freight for 2 more, Colorado and 1 more. I don't think Fox is going to say no if they bring in a Utah, right? Fox isn't going to say no. They're going to belly up to the bar. They're going to get Utah in the Big 12,
right?
And Arizona State, or if it goes to Washington. I think the key phrasing is Fox has agreed for 2, 1 Colorado and then another one. But I think they can be agreeable for another 2. And that's why I think Brett McMurphy and others, and I'm not speaking for reporters out there, but this is how I feel. I think they're the dream scenario is all 4 corner schools. That's what Brett Yormark is going for. And he's throwing the Hail Mary. He's going for broke, Oregon and Washington as well, or that'd be the 15th or 16th school. I mean, he's gonna reach for it, right? He's gonna go for it.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. And I was gonna say, I don't see any way, shape, or form that Fox says no to Oregon and Washington. I mean, I don't think
they say no to any of them. They've only agreed to 2 of them,
right,
for now. I mean, they didn't know how this was going to break, right? Fox doesn't want. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't watched Peek Around the Corner YouTube channel, Fox wants Oregon and Washington into the Big Ten. They might not be able to get them in there, but that's what they want. That's what they wanted before USC and UCLA decided to join the Big Ten. They wanted Los Angeles, and then sometime down the near future, they wanted Oregon and Washington. But
Right.
the Big Ten presidents don't want that right now. The legal council doesn't want that right now. So how we believe things are right now, at peek around the corner, is the following. Oregon and Washington, the potential of them going to the Big Ten is still not in play. I would be the most shocked person if we won't wake up tomorrow morning or later tonight, we hear an announcement that Tony Petitti, the commissioner, and the Big Ten have agreed with or have bring in Oregon and Washington, because we've been told still no, that's still not happening.
Wow. Even after the Colorado news?
Since the Colorado news.
It hasn't changed their mind at all.
Hasn't changed their mind because they're waiting for the Big 12 to crack the back Pac-12 open at least one more time.
Okay.
Because the league, they're very sensitive about. So when Tony Petitti says at the Big Ten media, my directions from the presidents is just for focus on the onboarding, the integration of UCLA and USC. He's speaking the truth. That's all they're doing right now, because the legal counsel of the Big Ten has said, we're not touching this yet. We're still not touching this yet. Even after Colorado, we're not touching this yet. And that's why when we believe Arizona goes in the Big 12 next week, then there's going to be another layer to the story, Couz.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Yeah, and I Outlaw College Football says, is it possible some contractions are coming next in realignment, like the SEC replacing in Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Florida State? I personally don't see it happening unless it's maybe way down the road. I don't see them kicking teams out of conferences.
I don't see it happening unless 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road, they completely change the structure, and then there's some sort of super league created.
Right.
But Mississippi State's not going to get kicked out.
Right.
Yeah.
Guys, real quick, we've got 300 people on the stream. Awesome. We appreciate the support. Thank you guys for being here. Me and Greg I'm having a blast right now, I can tell you. And we appreciate everybody being on here.
Everybody upset in the chat?
No, we've got a couple people that don't like you, but hey, that's part of the game.
Beautiful.
But if you guys want to make sure your comment gets read, you can do exactly what Jacob Yoho just did. Drop a super chat. There's a $sign at the bottom. Hit that $sign, leave your comment. It will get read. There is absolutely zero chance I can see everybody's comments. So unless you do this, I'm not going to be able to see them all. I will see as many as I can. I'm not saying I'll ignore it, but I just can't see them all. But here's Jacob Yoho. He says, your Mark is one of those lawyers you don't want to go against. LOL. Yeah, he's definitely somebody you don't want to stand toe-to-toe with in this landscape, I don't believe.
Keep him happy. UConn, that's why I think UConn's going to be a player in this all the way until the end, because you want to keep your Mark happy.
Yep. I saw a question for us, Greg. Anthony Manzano, #MOB, says, Couz and Greg, in your guys' honest opinions, if Florida State were to get AAU status to possibly follow Miami to the Big Ten, or would they go to the SEC? Great question, and that's actually something I meant to ask Greg earlier anyway, so perfect.
Yeah, again,
what's your opinion,
I'm probably
Greg?
going to get people upset with me. Or not maybe upset with me, but I'm going to get most of the people disagreeing with me. Florida State does not need to be AAU status to get an invite to the Big Ten. They don't need it. And neither did Oklahoma. If Oklahoma and Texas would have called Kevin Warren instead of calling Greg Sankey, Oklahoma would be going into the Big Ten. Big Ten would have accepted them. Jim Delaney said AAU first, but not only. Kevin Warren flat out said you don't need AAU status. He said it, flat out said it.
Yeah.
AAU is a private organization that does not have the Big Ten invitation veto pen. They don't get the veto. AAU is just shorthand. What it is, it's shorthand for us to say these are big research universities.
Yep.
These big research universities want to play with other Big Ten big research universities. Florida State is a decent-sized research university. They would be accepted into the Big Ten if everything else was okay. Their research is fine. Oregon is an AAU school, and they do less research than Florida State. Less research expenditure money at Oregon than at Florida State. Less in Oregon than Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech's not AAU. So, in my strong belief, Florida State does not need to get AAU. Do I find it's just very, very suspicious, incredibly suspicious that Miami, Florida, and Notre Dame both got AAU here in this last go around? Oh, heck. Oh, yes, because it's, it's easier internally for the Big Ten president to accept, but I don't think Florida State. Where does Florida State go, Couz? What do you think? If they had the opportunity to go to either one, which one would they go to?
I have actually changed my mind on this in the past few days. I originally have always thought SEC just because of the obvious reason, right? Southeast.
Yeah.
They seem to be a fit there. But after listening to a few Florida State guys and their channels, listening to them explain why, all this, there's one guy in particular over at Spear Addicts who says it's the Big Ten is their target. Florida State wants to be in the Big Ten, and he gave reasons as to why he thinks that. Number one, their president now used to be the president of Harvard. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, Michael Alford used to be the AD at a school in the Midwest, maybe even a Big Ten school. I don't remember the school off the top of my head. He has ties to the Big Ten somehow, is my understanding. So, and they are on track to get AAU. They're trying to get AAU status. That's the reason they hired the guy from Harvard. Now, this is all coming from a Florida State podcaster who seems to be on top of things. I'm assuming he knows what he's talking about. I don't have personal knowledge of that myself. But when you take all that into play, it kind of makes sense. And then you also add in the fact that you've heard from multiple people, the Big Ten would love to plant their flag in SEC country. What better way to do that than in Florida, right? Get into the state of Florida. It helps recruiting for every school in your conference. It gets you into a brand new market, one of the largest, as far as recruiting markets, probably the second behind Texas in the country. So why not do it, right? And it's in Florida, which is a state with a high population, and it's a very, very good brand in Florida State. So my guess is the Big Ten, Greg. I know that's a long answer, but I wanted to give reasoning behind it. Mm-hmm. So I think the Big Ten. I mean, do you share my opinion?
I don't. I really don't have an opinion on Florida State. That's why I asked you, because every single person I talk to, Couz, basically the favorite of the Big Ten landing any of those ACC schools is Miami of Florida. That's the school that everybody believes will be, without question of a doubt, sometime in the future, a Big Ten school. Mm-hmm. It's Miami of Florida. Now, it doesn't mean that they're the most valuable ACC school that the Big Ten can get, but it's the school that is most likely to go to the Big Ten of all the ACC schools. The school that the SEC would take a pass on, that the SEC would target Florida State first over Miami, Florida, and the Big Ten would be happy with Miami, Florida. So having said that, because I think when this breaks down, whenever it happens and how it happens, I think Miami, Florida is Big Ten bound. So therefore, does that mean Florida State's wouldn't be quite as valuable to the Big Ten? So you get into that. I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth on Florida State, going SEC and the Big Ten, and I always bring this up. It depends on how this happens.
Yeah.
If the people that you brought up early in the show are correct, and that ESPN can play an invisible hand in this, like Immaculate, I think he's probably in the chat room. I think I saw him in the chat room. He believes this to be the case. If that ESPN can play an invisible hand in this, then then we have a scenario going one way, because ESPN's they're gonna make sure that the SEC eats first, eats second, eats third, eats fourth, and then the Big Ten will probably be able to eat. And then the Big 12 will probably be able to eat if that's how this implodes. However, if ESPN doesn't play the invisible hand, if this implodes because Florida State successfully challenges and breaks the gore or Florida State gets a settlement or whatever, and Florida State does all of this, but withdrawals at the same time they announce they're going to challenge it. Well, then Katie bar the door. We don't know where this thing's going. Maybe they do have some sort of landing spot with the Big Ten.
Right.
Because obviously the Big Ten is more ready to expand. They really are, because they got CBS, NBC, Fox. They want to elevate their top tier programming as high as they possibly could to give value to those three networks. ESPN is all logged up already, right?
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. So what
I mean, if not, they would be. If not, would they be offering the Pac-10 a deal?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, so what I said earlier about the SEC. That's first off. Let me acknowledge this member, David Hackett, just became a new member over here at Couz's Corners VIP Lounge. David Hackett, thank you for your membership and your support, man. It means a lot. It's an easy way to support the show, guys. All you got to do is pay a small monthly fee, and you can support the show here if you like what I'm doing over here. We appreciate it. And I had a comment here about let's see. Well, first I want to talk about back to the Florida State thing. Florida State, I mean, I could see them going either way, to be honest. They could this whole all this info I'm hearing about the Big Ten. Yeah. Maybe that's a leverage play to get the ESPN and SEC to the table. At the end of the day, they will probably take either one of them, to be honest with you. As long as they can get into one of the top two leagues as far as revenue goes, I think they'll take it. Maybe the goal is to get both of those leagues, wanting them, to get Fox, ESPN kind of in a bidding, somewhat of a bidding war, if you want to call it that, to get them in. Maybe, I don't know. I think they'll. So my prediction is the Big Ten, but it wouldn't surprise me either way.
Yeah.
With Clemson, I think Clemson's a better fit for the SEC. Honestly, I see them going to the SEC, and I think Miami as well. I do think Miami will end up in the Big Ten too, Greg. Yeah, we could see Florida State and Miami both in the Big Ten.
Yeah, maybe. I just think Miami, Florida, pretty much, in my opinion, Miami, Florida is pretty much the only lock to the Big Ten. I think the rest of them, if the SEC can eat first, once we get to that point, I think the SEC, if they can eat first, if they set it up to where the ACC schools can leave, the top brands can leave, but they only can leave to the SEC. Then you're going to get your Florida State, your North Carolina, your Virginia, and your Clemson going to the SEC. Mm-hmm. And then you can see the Big Ten taking Miami, Florida, and potentially one other school. I don't think it's going to be Georgia Tech, but I think it's going to be Miami, Florida, and somebody else. And now
UNC, I guess. Yeah, I would guess UNC if I had to pick.
Well, if the SEC, if ESPN makes all this work, and then makes it so the SEC can eat first, then the SEC, I think, would take Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia, and Clemson. So all those four are off the table. So then Big Ten would take Miami, Florida, one other school, and then now the Big 12 eats. If that's how, if ESPN is a major player in the implosion of this conference, and if they can get a landing spot for these schools, if they can secure a Boston College and Wake Forest and a few other of those schools that aren't going to have landing spots in the Big 12 or the SEC, the Big 10, if they can secure their future somehow, then I think SEC is going to get everything they want. And that concludes North Carolina and Virginia. Those big two huge states. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're gonna if that's how it happens. Now, if it happens, if the implosion happens based upon courts, then this thing can go any which way.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch how it all plays out. We've got Outlaw of College Football channel member here. He says playing games in Mexico is a genius move by your mark. BYU has a humongous presence, and it opens up untapped revenue possibly. Bingo. Yeah. I totally agree, Outlaw.
Yeah. and it's going to be baseball, soccer. So we'll see. They're going to, they're not going to just do football and basketball. They're going to do some baseball down there.
Yep. And I think in a conversation I was having with Nathan Brown over at Big 12 Mafia as well, I think he mentioned something about that as well, how BYU has a huge following in Mexico. So there again, Brett Yormark's a businessman. He's a marketing guru. He's no dummy.
Yeah.
Michael Alford was athletic director at Central Michigan before going to Florida State. That's what I was thinking. It was Central Michigan, but I didn't want to misspeak there. I wasn't 100% confident in that. So not a Big Ten school, but it's in Big Ten, the Big Ten footprint.
Sure. Yep.
So he has connections, I'm sure. Greg, let's talk a little bit of on-field football for a minute.
You got it.
Let's talk. West Virginia picked up a defensive back out of the transfer portal from Minnesota named Beanie Bishop. I'm assuming you've watched Beanie Bishop play. What's your opinion of him?
Had a really good year with the Golden Gophers. He's a slot cornerback. I don't think he can play on the outside, so I'm expecting West Virginia to be the starter, the slot cornerback. So he's going to play on the inside. He's good. He's very good. It's just one of many Minnesota Golden Gophers starters who went in the transfer portal out of our very good defense that broke my heart. That's got me upset. And he's a good player. He's going to help West Virginia. West Virginia's secondary wasn't very good last year.
Oh, they were not.
They were often lost. Benny Bishop doesn't get lost out there. He's a big upgrade for whatever you had last year. A big pickup for the Mountaineers.
Awesome. Thank you. It's good to know.
Breaks my heart. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. I've been wanting
He's
to hear
not
your
the only
opinion
guy
on him.
we lost either. So
yeah, you guys, there's a lot of stuff, and I'm going to get to the whole stuff, all the PJ Flex stuff in a minute. Guys, real quick, 300 people in here. We appreciate it. I couldn't ask you. I think this might be my biggest live stream yet. So I much appreciated. I got to give Greg a lot of credit for that. I know a lot of you guys are over here from his channel. If you are here from his channel, do me a favor and subscribe to mine if you don't care, and also hit the thumbs up button on this live stream.
Sorry, Couz. Read David Hackett's
Super chat.
Yeah. I'm sorry. We'll get to whatever you want to get to.
No, that's fine. Yeah. David Hackett says Arizona Board of Regents has meeting Monday, July 31st. Hearing Arizona speeding up to join Big 12. Awesome, David. David, I'm going to ask you another question. Is there an agenda out for that meeting yet? I'd like to know that. If there is, I'd like to go online and try to find it.
Yeah.
Also, another. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Greg.
I'm just saying, table 14.
Yep.
Bucky's Couz Corner. It's reserved for Mr. Robbins. He's got a little bit of time left. That's what we've been hearing. But
yeah,
no.
Yeah, I heard somebody on Twitter mention a deadline. Maybe they've given him a deadline. I'm not sure if I believe that or not.
Yeah.
John Teal, thank you for the $2 super chat. He says Big Ten takes Notre Dame, Miami, Virginia, maybe Tulane. And then down to the bottom, another super chat. Thank you, John. To correct his mistake, he says not Tulane. Sorry, I mean Stanford. So he thinks it's Notre Dame, Miami, Virginia, and Stanford. Interesting. That's the first time in a while that I've heard Stanford's name being brought up.
Yeah, well, I have to take a big L on Stanford. I thought they'd be a Big Ten by now. That was the one school coming out of June 30th, 2022. In fact, I put a tweet out there saying if I was at the sports book and if there was a wager up there that said Stanford to the Big Ten, I'd go to the betting window and I'd make that paper go blur and have all these betting tickets. So I would have lost my you-know-what. The Stanford thing, Couz, I can't get my arms around that at all. They're not, you know what? Okay. So we're at a time of great change.
Right.
Great change. And we're doing our best to try to figure out where this is heading. And we were fortunate to find out about the USC calling the Big Ten, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the whole Colorado story is a lesson to everybody out there that the rules of the past don't necessarily apply to the rules of the future. schools in the Pac-12, large research universities don't want to leave each other. We all know that to be the true, but because of the change in landscape, they might have to leave each other. Colorado is the first. We believe Arizona is going to be second. Probably Arizona State going to be the third because of the change in landscape of college football. So it's foolish. It would be foolish of me to think that that doesn't apply to Stanford, in the sense that Stanford doesn't want to play the NIL game. They're probably not going to want to play the higher direct compensation from the school to their student athletes, right? They're not going to make the investments needed, even though they have a great athletic department. They've all these Olympic sports they've done great at Stanford. Incredible university, unbelievable university, very important university in our country, but yet maybe they're not changing with the times. And so I think the chances of them going to the Big Ten has dropped massively here in the last 12 months. And I would not have predicted that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and let's face it, Stanford, I'm pretty confident Stanford's number one priority is not football or even athletics for that matter. Now, they've done really well in athletics.
Yeah.
I mean, they've won more NCAA team championships than any school in the country. Across all sports, obviously. But they have so much endowment money coming in and things like that. I mean, Stanford could probably afford to go independent if they chose to. And maybe they go to the Ivy League. I don't know who's to say that might not happen either. There's a lot of options out there for a school like Stanford.
They tried to go to the Ivy League about 7 decades ago, but they got rejected 6 or 7 decades ago. Yeah, so maybe they try again. I'm sure the Ivy League would accept them if that's what they decide to do.
Now, Cal's another story. I don't know if they would have quite the financial ability to do what Stanford can do. I'm sure they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have a lot of money as well. They're, again, a very high standard academic institution that gets a lot of endowment money. But
the problem is that they're public. Stanford's not. Stanford
correct.
Would have more room and space to make some, decisions that are kind of untraditional, and it'd be tougher for California to do any of that stuff.
Right. Agreed. And in Washington, the two I really feel the worst for, because I don't know if they have a home, is Washington State and Oregon State. In this whole thing, I don't know where they end up. They may end up. I mean, there's been some rumors that Oregon State and the Big 12 are talking, but I just don't know if I put any weight into that or not.
Mm-hmm. We haven't heard any of that, but I mean, we saw the buzz, but no one's told me anything like that.
Right. All right, Greg. Last thing on my mind, I really wanted to get your thoughts on is the whole PJ Fleck situation at Minnesota. Man, there's been some reports come out lately about there have been football players, I guess, accusing him of having a toxic culture or whatever. Mm-hmm. My personal opinion from the outside looking in, based on what I've read, it seems like it's some players who were not happy with maybe playing time or something, and just decide to go after the coach. What are your thoughts on it as a Minnesota fan?
Well, first of all, make it a note that I'm heavily biased on this story, right?
Right, absolutely.
So,
that's okay.
It's this story comes up basically in some sort of form every year on PJ Fleck. Mm-hmm. And it's always at the end of the day, it's just, in fact, the local Minnesota writers are just, rolling their eyes saying this is happening again, because like in that story, in the front office sports story, the Board of Regents guy is Michael Huzu, HSU. Mm-hmm. He's in every single story and article. Basically, he was the Board of Regents member who basically doesn't want there to be any sports at the University of Minnesota. He's an extremist. So he's in the gentleman is interviewed in every single anti-sports article in anything. Yeah. So he was in the article, of course. Mm-hmm. The unnamed players who aren't given their names, according to the current players, they're guys who got in trouble.
Okay.
There is no Fleck Bank. There is no coin. You're not paying That was a Fleck. You know, Fleck has all these sayings, right? And yes, you do have to memorize them. Not Fleck is not for everybody. Okay, he's different. He's odd. He's unique. He is, however, authentic. What you see in front of the camera is what you see in back of the camera. That is how he is. You do have to do an extreme amount of community service. If you're going to be with the program, you have to go to that children's hospital. You have to put in the time. You have to be in the front row during classes. You have to wear a collar. He is as odd as he is, in the tight jeans or the tight pants or whatever, the fancy stuff he wears. He's as old school as you can get. He's a Jim Tressel protege. So it's hard. Like Athan Kaliak-Manis, our quarterback, who might become our best quarterback in 60 years at Minnesota.
Wow.
He said on Twitter, he says, it's not a toxic culture. It's a hard culture. It's tough. It's tough to be a Golden Gopher football player. One of the things that rings true in that story is that PJ Fleck had to stop having guys do some running when they showed up late to practice, stuff like that. That is against the Big Ten rules now, and he has stopped that.
Really?
Yeah. You cannot punish with physical activity. Now he has players cleaning up, or maybe he has them doing something, but whatever. Yeah, that's a Big Ten. So some of that stuff rings true, but most of the players, they love him, adore him. All the players that got into the NFL, they speak so highly of him. We think it's a story that's going nowhere. However, if something else pops in that story, right, then we'll, maybe, but none of that is hidden. As a Minnesota Golden Gopher player, if you're committed, if you go into the program, yes, you have to learn what all those acronyms mean. All those phrases. The Golden Gophers have won 29 games in the last 3 full seasons. 29 games. They're 4-0 under PJ Fleck. They have the 5th most wins of all Big Ten schools in the last 5 years. No one would have predicted that success for PJ Fleck at Minnesota, even though he was great at Western Michigan. Because University of Minnesota, we have no advantages over anybody when it comes to football. None. 0. We're the most northern school in all of Power 5. We can't even do a spring football game outside in April, okay? Because it's always a winter storm coming down at us. We couldn't do it we have all the disadvantages. Our ability to get student athletes into our school is unbelievably difficult.
Yeah.
That school is so strict. And PJ Fleck, that's why it matches PJ Fleck, because he is so strict.
And that would make sense why the school has supported him through all this.
Yes.
Well,
and the reason why they've won 29 games, the best 3-year stretch at Minnesota since 1962 to 64, is because of this culture. Because all these guys, if you're in there, you're all in. So the Gophers, if they meet, they're not going to be as talented as you across the field. They're not going to be as talented as the other teams because of this culture, because of Fleck is a little nutty, and they all want to play for the guys who stay there, who want to play for him. They play lights out for him. That's why they've been able to win those football games.
Yeah.
Problem is, we haven't been able to beat the Iowa Hawkeyes. We haven't been able to win the Big Ten West title. Our heart breaks every year. That's the problem. So at the end of the season, we're heartbroken anyways. But I'm just letting you know, we don't think Fleck is in trouble. When this story popped, we all rolled our – it's going to come out next year too, Couz. It's going to come out next year in a different form.
I got you.
But, yeah.
See, I wasn't familiar with the history there. So I appreciate you educating me on that. Real quick, Outlaw College Football's got another comment. He says Utah will be left out because of their incredibly stupid negative comments towards the Big 12 just a few months ago, and your Mark has sort of alluded to that. I'm assuming he's talking about the comment where he said he wants teams that want to be in the league. Is what I think he's referring to there, which your Mark did say, as I alluded to earlier. And then Kenny Evans, another channel member, he says, I hope if Arizona joins the Big 12, Nico doesn't leave West Virginia. Kenny, I never thought of that, man, but that's
woo!
definitely something to think about. And
Nico Marchio, I loved his high school tape at State of Arizona.
Mhm.
I followed his recruitment. West Virginia won a big one there. But now, Couz, you believe he's not going to start the season, right, as the starter?
I don't, but there are a lot of people who do. I mean, I think Garrett Green is just more ready. He's more, he's been here 3 years. Maybe this is his 4th year now. I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, he's the veteran guy. I think it's his time.
Yeah.
And I just think it's hard. I mean, I think Nico's extremely talented, and Nico has a higher ceiling probably than what Garrett does. I just don't think he'll be there as a redshirt freshman week 1 in Happy Valley. I mean, can you imagine throwing a freshman quarterback into that environment?
Well,
not if anybody can handle it, it'd be Nico because he's got some moxie. He's played in big games before. He played in one of the best high school programs in the country out at Hamilton. So he's been in big games, but nothing compares to going into Happy Valley.
Yeah, well,
Saturday night.
I've got Penn. You know what I got Penn State doing this year, don't you?
I do, and I didn't, Greg. I wasn't going to bring that up, man.
Okay.
But
all right.
No,
I mean, you might not know the full
ahead.
extent what I got the.
I probably don't. I just know you haven't picked.
I've got them winning
the Big Ten, right?
I've got them winning the Big Ten. I've got them going to the college football playoffs, and I've got them beating Georgia.
What?
28 to 23, the same exact score that when Paterno defeated Georgia. I can't remember the year now. I can't remember the year. What happened to me? Whatever year that was, when number 2 Penn State played number 1 Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and Penn State won 28 to 23. That's my prediction. National championship, 28-23 Penn State. I think this is Franklin's year. That team, depending on how Drew Aller plays, the quarterback, he hasn't had much time. He hasn't faced many live bullets either.
Right.
But if he is who I think he is, who Penn State thinks he is, Penn State is absolutely stacked. So I think West Virginia has a very tough first game.
Oh, they do. And Drew Aller, I don't know how to pronounce his name.
I call him Aller.
My partner Mountaineer Paul thinks he's an absolute stud. He said he watched their spring game.
Yeah.
And said he did not look like a freshman quarterback.
No, physically, if he is, Penn State's going to be, they're going to be a tough team to handle.
Yeah. By the way, guys, I want to remind everybody, a lot of you may wonder what in the world that yellow box is up in the corner of that logo. That is Hoops from the Hills. That's a basketball channel that Mountaineer Paul and I have started together. If you want to keep up with West Virginia Mountaineer basketball, that's a place you can go do that. So I ask that you please subscribe to that channel as well. We covered the Bob Huggins stuff extensively. You can check out all those episodes. And obviously, you're right here at Couz's Corner now, which is this logo in the other corner. We appreciate you stopping in. I thank Greg for hopping on here. Got a question here I want to answer real quick before we hop off. He says, Moth Prof says, Couz, who is your G5 New Year's 6 buster? Mine is Troy. Really? Wow. Interesting. It's not Troy. I would lean towards probably either I haven't really given this a lot of thought, but I would lean probably towards UTSA, maybe. Or because they're Trader's got that program rolling. And then and I think they have a lot back from last year's team, from what I understand. And then, gosh, I don't know if Tulane can keep up with what they did last year. I think that may have been lightning in a bottle for them. Man, I don't know, Moth Prof. I haven't really had a chance to think about that a lot.
I would have Tulane as the favorite because Michael Pratt, the great quarterback, coming back next year, and then I would have Liberty and UTSA.
Yeah, I forgot about Liberty. Yeah, Liberty's another one.
UTSA is a 2-time Conference USA champions.
Mm-hmm.
However, they're not going to defend it this year because they moved up to the AAC. They and UTSA and Tulane play November 25th. That game might be the game that decides who is the New York. Keep saying New York. The New Year's buster. What the question was. So November 25th, Tulane, UTSA. That could be the one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that, Greg. Yeah, the UTSA's. I mean, that Trader's going to have a Power 5 job very, very soon.
Yeah.
In my opinion. One more. Got another super chat here. John Teal, $2 super chat. Thank you, man. He says, if Stanford and Cal are out, who's USC and UCLA travel partner? I think it'll end up being Oregon and Washington. I mean, I know they're not really. Maybe they're not close enough to be travel partners, but
yeah, they're not close enough to be travel partners, but they're in the same time zone. And you know how I feel about it. I've said it over 1,000 times. I don't think the Big Ten is going to end up with only 2 schools west of Lincoln, Nebraska. Right. I cannot see that happening.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's some rumors out there that USC doesn't want Oregon in the conference. I'm not sure if I buy that or not.
They may not want them, but they're not even a voting member right now.
Right.
And even if they were, you know, I don't, you know, if I was, forget about everything else that everyone else says. If I was the Ohio State Buckeyes, if I was the Michigan Wolverines, if I was the Nittany Lions, why would I want USC and UCLA to be the only 2 schools west of Lincoln with all that incoming media money, right? All that Big Ten exposure, CBS, NBC, Fox, all these new toys that USC and UCLA are going to be able to buy, all this money they're going to be able to give to their recruits, their boosters are not going to have to load up the they're going to be able to load up the NIL because they're not going to have to give as much money to facility, you know, whatever. Why would a Buckeye, a Wolverine, and Nittany Lion want UCLA and USC to have all that space to themselves out in the West Coast? Of course, the Buckeyes recruit out there. Of course, Michigan. But they're really focused on the East and the Southeast, right? And the Midwest, of course, and Texas, of course. There's no way in my mind, besides all the other reasons I've said, why would they let those 2 foxes be able to have all the huge, big hen house out there in the West Coast? I don't see it.
I don't see it either, Greg. And that's why I think, back to our earlier discussion, that's why I don't think Brett Yormark would be really keen, or maybe not even him, but the presidents of the Big 12 may not want to bring Oregon and Washington in because they know they're just going to leave in a few years, you know? That's my opinion. Guy Gustman, thank you. Guy Gustman, I'm sorry. Thank you for the super chat, man. We appreciate the support here. I didn't see a comment to go with it. Maybe you were just helping the show out. Either way, thank you. Yeah, everybody, once again, I want to remind you, Greg Flugaur, he has Greg, I'll let you do it, man. Where can everybody find you at?
Greg Flugaur, you can find me on Twitter at Flug Empire, FLUGEMPIRE, Flug Empire. And I have a college football YouTube channel. College football's peek around the corner with your host, Greg Flugaur. You can find me YouTube. Come on by, check out my next episode or live show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, everybody, he does great work over there. His live streams are amazing. He has really good call-ins. Very entertaining show. One of my go-tos, actually. But anyway, Greg, man, thank you again. I'm glad we were able to do this. We'll have to do it again sometime. One of these days, I'm going to try to call into your show. I haven't been able to do it yet just because the timing never works. But
yeah,
and a couple of times I have tried, I got a busy signal. So
yeah, that's a problem. It's a good problem for the show because
it's a great problem. Yes, it absolutely is. And usually I don't have time to. Sometimes I don't have time to keep calling, so I just I'll let the next guy get it, you know. So, but anyway, Greg, thanks again for coming on, man. Is there anything else you want to say or do, or shout out before you go?
No, I just it's a pleasure, Justin Walker, to be on your show. We're going to do it again. Thanks for making this happen. I gave you short notice, so I appreciate you having me on. Golden Blue Dude. You know, I think about him all the time. Mountaineer YouTube channel. Great guy. I sort of did a dedication to him on I don't remember, maybe it was last live show, the 2 live shows ago. There you go. The sunglasses.
Yeah.
We sang, I sang, what did I sing? The old
Country Roads.
Well, I did that for him, but I also dedicated this last live show when it was official with Colorado.
Oh, yeah.
I think Colorado Rocky Mountain High.
Oh, okay. I missed that one.
Yeah, but that's okay. It was I did a lot of damage to people in the chat room when I sang that. So, but that's yeah, he touched all of us, and I was not able to become good friends with him like you did. He did reach out to me. We did talk, especially in the last couple months. He kept asking me to be on his show. I explained to him why I couldn't, and he understood why, because family situation stuff. So, but we would have done it, and it would have been pretty cool. So thanks. I appreciate letting me come in a mountaineer country here and be able to have some time with you. And we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
And, when the Golden Gophers lose a crushing game sometime during the year, I'll come on your show and I'm going to cry right in front of everybody that you guys.
Hey, that's okay. It's a great place to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
You
can cry right along with me, because I'm sure West Virginia is going to lose one too. But
yeah.
Guy, I think this is the comment he wanted to leave with his super chat. He says, U of A board meeting is for Committee of Free Expressions. So apparently it has nothing to do with realignment.
But keep an eye on those Board of Regents meetings.
They can pop up anytime.
Every time I post one on Twitter, I get a whole bunch of people saying, Greg, can't do that. What are you doing? Well, it's public universities who have to, because of sunshine laws and other laws, they have to post those meetings. And, it's okay to look at those meetings and try to figure out what they're all about. So keep an eye on them.
Everybody go check out Outlaw of College Football. He's got a great channel as well. Very entertaining.
Absolutely.
And I got to share this. Gregory Krug says, a peek around Couz's Corner.
Yeah.
Man, we should have just named this show that, Greg.
Yeah, Couz Corner, peek around the corner. We are the two corners of college football.
The two corners of college football have come together.
Yes.
For the first time, this is July 29th. Write it on your calendars, folks. July 29th, 2023. History has been made.
Yes, sir.
Rick Flair on Colorado, the Big 12. Woo! I love
Rick Flair's from Minnesota.
He is, and he used to be one of his many wives. Was from West Virginia, actually.
There you go.
All right, Greg, thank you again, man. I'll let you go. I know you got things to do.
Got it. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, guys, listen, awesome interview. Greg and I have been trying to work that out for weeks now. Our schedules just never seem to line up. He's a very busy guy. I'm a very busy guy. He like him. Sometimes I have to do my live streams on the fly. I can't really schedule them ahead of time most of the time. But today it just worked out. So I'm glad it did. But anyway, guys, we thank you so much. I have got to jump off of here. I have to go grab dinner, man. I'm really hungry. But thank you all for hopping on. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for the participation, guys. This is one of my biggest live streams, if not the biggest live stream I've ever done. So thank you all for that. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Please hit the like button on your way out if you haven't. If you're watching this on the replay, you can still do that. Still subscribe, still like, still leave comments. It all helps the YouTube algorithm. If you want to become a member of the Couz's Corner VIP Lounge, be sure to hit the join button below. It's an easy way to support the show if you want to support the show, and there are a few perks that go along with it. Once again, guys, like button, subscribe. Thank you again. God bless you all. And Q Country Roads.